Today we're going to be talking about broad versus interest versus lookalike audiences. If you don't run advertising right now, hopefully you can get the recordings and listen to this later as well, because some of these things might not make sense to you. But if you do run ads, then you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, especially if you're more in the weeds and trying to study and get good at the advertising side. There's so much convoluted advice out there right now about media buying, how to run the campaigns, how to structure them. And so I'm going to break them down on what we see. And then I'm going to talk about finding what we call hot pockets, which is just essentially micro tests on your creative. If you've ever had an ad and you're like, man, everything we create just cannot beat this one ad, and it's so frustrating, and I don't know why it wins, but every single time it wins and we don't know how to beat it. I'm going to show you how to get more out of that ad, and more likely how to find out exactly what's causing it to win and how to expand on it. Cool. So, can everyone say purpose? Say it again, purpose. Purpose. Great. The purpose of what we're doing and how we're building campaigns now, the real point of it is to cast the widest net possible. When you're in the beginning and you have little data to understand of what works in your market, what type of campaigns, what targeting works or what creative works, what you want to really do is create a situation where you have the widest net possible, and what you're trying to do is essentially like a bat, echo, is you're waiting for these signals to come back to you and tell you directional feedback. And if there's one thing that you can get out of this training today is that as you're building marketing, what you're looking for is directional feedback. But everyone is looking for definitive feedback. And that's a problem. Because we got really, really lucky for several years in the advertising space that we had such good tracking and attribution, such good targeting. We can get really, really minute in how we're doing it. But we got lazy because now we expected the data to always tell us exactly what to do, rather than combining our marketing intelligence and directional feedback to make decisions. But in today, it's only going to get worse. Data attribution and tracking is only going to get worse over time as people become more and more resistant to letting advertisers have access to their data, right? And they will let you, they'll let you have access to their data, but they want it in a way to where you can have no idea that it's coming from them, right? Which is against the whole point. But you have to get really, really good at directional feedback. And so the purpose of what we're doing here is how do you get the widest net possible, but how do you get the clearest signal possible to be able to make decisions that allows you to essentially cut some of the guessing game out, but make educated decisions when you have kind of gray area to navigate through, right? So this is a part of what we call the TTS method, which is essentially, I want you to imagine advertising demographics, targeting like a playing field, right? Think a game of Battleship, okay? And essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to cast the widest net, hit little pockets in each area, and figure out which one starts to give us the hits. If we can get more hits in a certain area versus others, that's the directional feedback to start focusing on that area. Now this might feel a little confusing, so let's just go ahead and illustrate it a little bit. So let's say, for example, that you have a campaign. What we'd like to do is create essentially 4 different ad sets that go after different areas within our market that we understand to be true, right? So example, if you're a coach or consultant, you probably know influencers or publications that are inside of that target market. Yeah? Influencers, ever heard of Tony Robbins? Great, that's the one we'll use. The next one, let's say it's Forbes or Success Magazine, right? We're gonna start going after those demographics, those interests. But so we fire off the first ad set and let's say we get 3 hits, right? The next one is demographics or behaviors or leave completely broad, and you get 2 hits. Then you try competitors and you get 4 hits, right? Then remarketing, you typically always will get a hit because that's just what remarketing does. But you get 4 hits, right? This would be the sign that, oh, we should focus more time on targeting competitors versus just broad or versus just interests or versus just publications. All we're looking for is not necessarily winning campaigns, but we're going, when we launch these ads over here, we got far more hits than we did over here, right? And I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. There's obviously a lot more nuance to how you target, but it matters very little what we're finding. And all we're looking for is the directional feedback of, we get more hits when we go over here versus other places, so let's just spend our time over there, okay?
What do you consider a hit?
A hit would be like good results in your ads, or even just signs of conversions, really. Because when you have no data, a lot of times you're probably not gonna just get amazing results right out of the gate. But what you are looking for is just traction, right? That directional feedback that tells you I'm getting better click costs, better click-through rates, more conversions over here versus over here. And so I'm just going to segment my focus over here. What you see a lot of the times, and really when you go back, it's like, man, you would open up accounts and you see a campaign with like hundreds of ad sets, right? And then we're targeting all different interests. And it's just because we can get really minute. But now it's much more of just going, okay, I'm getting more traction over here. I'm going to divert my focus over here. But really, and what I'm about to get into is where your time should be more and more spent, less on the targeting side. So as an example, when there's kind of a couple philosophies when it comes to targeting right now. The first philosophy is go broad, have no interests, no targeting whatsoever, and just let Facebook optimize for it, right? That's like one of the main philosophies. The next one is stacked audiences. So all that essentially means is, okay, I've got Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Robert Kiyosaki. I'm going to stack all of those interests together in one ad set to make a really, really large audience that I can target, and then let Facebook optimize. The next philosophy is really just going super segmented. So I'm going to have one ad set that is Tony Robbins male between 30 and 45. The next one, Tony Robbins female, 30 to 45. And you're just getting super segmented, right? So those are the different philosophies when it comes to targeting right now and media buying. As an example, just to prove the point, this was one example of a client that we had, and we were reviewing their data of the previous year so that we can start game planning of how we're going to media buy for the year of 2023. And so what we wanted to first do is look back and go, okay, well, of the money that we spent and the conversions that we had, where was the success coming from? And so we first looked at, okay, lookalike 1%. If you don't know what a lookalike is, essentially Facebook has this cool way of taking a list that you give it and then analyzing the users inside of it and then creating a, let's say, copy of that audience of people who are similar to those users, right? So if you shop at Whole Foods and you buy Lululemon and you wear a Rolex and I buy something, well, there's a big chance that you might be interested in it, right? That's the concept. So when we looked at lookalike audiences, that year we spent about $136,000. It generated 1,300 book calls at about $100 per book call. Unique purchase for their thing on the back end at $482, right? Not bad. But interest, a big difference in spend allocation, $823,000 spent over the year, 23,000 booked calls, cost per book call around $90, unique purchase cost or CAC around $455. Very clear, interests are the way to go. Directional feedback, great. So the next step of what we did was, essentially we were like, all right, let's take the stacked philosophy, let's take all of the best interests that we had from that year, let's stack them together and then run that as a campaign, right? Because that makes sense. Let's just create one ad set instead of multiple and let Facebook go target and optimize within that type of targeting where we take all the best ones we know worked and put them together. So what did that do? Well, it dropped the cost per book call to $85. CPA was around $567. Not great. We wanted to bring it lower, right? But this should work technically. These are audiences that were proven, but it's still just higher cost per book call. So what we did next was theorize, like, okay, how could we make this different? Why is that CPA higher than we want it to be? And this is one thing that I think a lot of media buyers, really business owners and marketers in general don't do enough, is that you don't actually create hypotheses of why you think something is doing what it's doing, right? And the more you can actually just take a step back and go, in a formal manner, this is my hypothesis. Our hypothesis here was, there are probably audiences that can gain more traction, get more clicks, get more booked calls, but actually perhaps have lower quality customers in those audiences. And so could we then break apart these audiences into different segments, different ad sets, and figure out if there are audiences that, while maybe a book call is higher, but their CPAs go lower? Could we figure that out? So that's what we did next. We segmented out those proven interests into different ad sets, and we wanted to figure out if there are ones that could have higher levels of profit, even if they have different ad metrics on the front end, and that's exactly what we saw. Winning interest number 2, we spent $25,000. Cost per book call was $83. Not much different, right? Stacked was $85. But the CPA cut down to $241. Big difference. Next one, $38,000. Cost per book call, again, $83. Not much different. $2 difference. But the cost per book call. Am I 12 years old? Am I cracking my voice? I look 12, so I might as well have the voice line up, right? $265, right? CPA difference, not very different. And so even some of you might have been noticing this if you've run ads before. It's like, man, it doesn't have that much of a different of a call, but man, all of a sudden our show rates tanked, right? Or all of a sudden like our CPAs went sky high. There's a chance that even while you might be getting the book calls on the front end, that quality of customers in that audience is not as high. And so your CPAs or your show rates are not lining up on the back end, right? And so it is important to start taking these steps to theorize and go, man, what are other factors that we might not be thinking of here? Because most media buyers will stop at that cost per book call, and they're never going any further. They're gonna say that CPA is in line, we're doing our job. But there is a good chance that it's attracting the wrong people, and you could be getting lower quality people. On the flip side, it could always be on the opposite end too. Some of you are so much pushing for lower CPAs, lower CPLs, but you should actually be getting higher CPAs, higher CPLs, because that's when you're attracting the higher level customers. And so it's very important that you take those two sides and you're not just looking at one thing and assuming that everything else is a control. In marketing, everything is a variable, right? And so a cost per book call does not really mean anything unless you also assume that the quality of each of those calls is the exact same, which is never true, right? So it's just a different way of thinking. Another example, because I want to also show the opposite side. It's not just about, hey, this segmented works. It's the opposite side as well. This was one of our low ticket funnels that we have internally, right? In this one, we were going pretty segmented, stacked interest, proven interest, almost the exact same setup as you saw previously. But what we saw, CPA of 290, average cart value of 197, not great. We don't like that. So then the next thought was, okay, what if we just changed nothing about the funnel, changed nothing about the ads. All we did was change the targeting. We switched to entirely broad, no targeting. What happened? CPA dropped to 145. Average cart value, 156. Now we have a self-liquidating funnel, and we're profitable on the front end. Just by that one nuance change, right? And the point I'm really trying to make here is that not all ad accounts are the same. So if you hear a strategy from someone who's talking about this is amazing, this is what people should be doing, if you're dumb if you don't do this, every ad account is different. Namely, it doesn't have the same data that you have in your ad account or your pixel. But secondly, Facebook does not roll out updates across the board. When they do updates, it's account by account, it's region by region. And so every account can respond differently to the different ways you build your account. So one of the things that we like to do when we come into an account with a client is first go, which account reaction is this? Is this an account that responds better to broad? Does it respond better to segmented? Does it respond better to stacked? They all respond differently. And so the first thing that we want to know is which style of building campaigns does this account react best to? Okay? Because it makes a huge difference. Cool. Biggest thing here, audiences are important, but they don't matter as much as you think they do, so don't overcomplicate it. It's pretty easy to figure out what type of people you want to go after, right? Your target market, who are their biggest influencers, who are the biggest competitors, what are the biggest things they like in life. But now, don't spend so much time on your targeting and focus more on the creative side. So example, this is kind of similar to like how our campaigns or accounts start to look, is to where our accounts is essentially just each campaign is a housing test structure. So every campaign, example inside of this campaign, every ad set you see actually has the same targeting because we figured out what works. We're not changing it. We're focusing entirely on angle, concept, positioning of the creative. And everything, once we find an audience that works, we need to do very little on adjusting it. And we're focused entirely on creative and concept that we're coming to the market with, right? So our campaigns are just housing test experiments, and that's all we're really doing. So example, all big CBO, all of the interests are the same. It's just, you can see each ad set has a different concept or campaign promo or angle that we're coming at the market with, right? So, essentially what you want to have, every account needs to have two things. Two things. You need new concepts and ideas being introduced, and you need to have iterations of the winning ads being tested. And you need to try to figure out a way to create a balance between both. And that's how you're really going to be able to scale an account. If you're not doing these things at all times, or you're not having a balance of these things, you'll either over leverage on one end, you'll fatigue out, or you'll just not be able to scale as high because you don't have enough ammo for your guns when you're launching campaigns, right? And so the goal is to try to find a balance between iterations and new concepts. Really, what we're trying to do is really go from the whole angle idea, which is what everyone really talks about, but the idea to just concepts. Concepts are more macro, right? A lot of people will take a new hook and say that this is a new angle, and it's a slight variation of the same idea that they were communicating to the market beforehand. But what we really want to do is take it a little bit bigger and start going, okay, how do we change the concept of the ad itself, right? And so the core idea that you want to test in an account that you have high confidence will perform, what you really want to do is go, okay, we've found this main thing that works to the market, but how do we now expand it or how do we optimize it? And we do that through concepts. Concepts are 3 different areas, either ad style, messaging, or persona. All right, so the first thing you want to do is like choose the idea that you have, and then you want to test the concept. And the way to do that is an example. An idea option is like, okay, let's say it's an ad style example, right? The concepts that you can do underneath that is like, okay, I'm gonna do a direct sale versus and an offer versus what I was doing before. Maybe you're being indirect, right? Or you could do an us versus them comparison, which is, if you've ever seen those ads that are like the company or brand on one side, the competitor on the other, and the other always looks a lot worse, right? It's either black and white or it's got red everywhere, right? And that's an us versus them. It's an easy comparison model for someone to read. But then you have testimonial reviews, unboxing, story. We're changing the concept of the ad itself, but the idea of what we're presenting internally is the same. But we're just changing the way that we're communicating it to our market, right? The next idea option could be messaging, right? And this would be awareness levels. Anyone not know what awareness levels are when I say that? Cool, don't be worried, it's all good. So, Eugene Schwartz, if you've never read the book Breakthrough Advertising, it's probably, if not the best direct response advertising book ever made. But he talks about how every market has 5 states of awareness, right? Essentially means that like, you and I could have the same problem, but you might have a different awareness of your problem than I do, right? Maybe just because I've done more research, I know more about it, right? So he says that, really state number 1 is like you're unaware. You have no idea that you have a problem, so you're not even looking for a solution, right? Back in the day when people were before electric dryers and washers, right? They were just washing it by hand. For a while, probably no one thought that they had a problem, so they're just doing it. After a while, people start to be aware of the problem. Man, doing laundry takes all day, right? I don't like it. But they're not aware of any other solution out there. They're just complaining. This is something I have to deal with. It's annoying, right? Then solution aware is essentially they start to understand that there are solutions out there to the problem. This would be around the time that electric washers become a thing. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden I know there's solutions, right? Unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware. So essentially that's when it's like, okay, Samsung versus LG. You can start comparing between them. And the final one is most aware, right? They're aware of every problem, they're aware of all the solutions, they've probably done all the research, they probably jumped on Groupon and seen if there's a discount, right? They probably looked at Amazon. But so that's the awareness levels. So whenever the idea or the concept that you can start going after is I can start addressing the different states of awareness within my market, right? And when I tell people, it's like the goal is to eventually address all states of awareness. But for most of us, including me, we don't have enough money. So the goal is to then go, how do I address the most profitable state of awareness, right? For which for a lot of you, it's not going to be educating your market that they have a problem. It's going to be presenting the solution to the problem they're already aware of, right? And for the coaching and info space, a lot of you, they're product aware too. They probably know some competitors, right? Or they've been a part of some of your competitors' programs. So they're probably either product or they're fully aware, right? But those people are the lowest hanging fruit because you don't have to educate them on the issues of their problems and how big their problem is, and then they should pay a lot of money to solve that problem because they're very aware. So your marketing should go less on educating them of all of the problems and should actually just be proving why you're the person to solve it because they don't need education on the other stuff, right? So it'd be changing awareness levels. Then there's undeniable problem, talking about specific pain points, talking about your USP, unique selling proposition, what makes you unique, or mechanism, right? Which is essentially the person, technology, thing that allows you to be unique or special that no one else can do, right? That's the mechanism. Idea 3, persona. This could be going after different avatar segments, personalities, demographics, or industries. But the whole idea of this is going, pick an idea, and then pick a concept, and then create an ad around that concept. But focus less on your targeting. Start focusing on what is the idea that we believe we want to test, and then what is the concept that we're going to do to test it. right? So if you don't know, if you really kind of want an easy guide of how to start going down this path, you can take these questions. I'll go over them briefly. You can screenshot it, take a picture, whatever. But essentially, it's like, what does my ideal prospect already know? What do they already know about you, your brand? What do they already know about your product? What do they already know about themselves? Are they looking for solutions? What do they already know about their own problem? This will guide you into figuring out where they are in their state of awareness. And when you can figure out the state of awareness, that's going to better illustrate to you on what kind of concept to do. For example, if I want to do an us versus them, but my market is not yet solution aware, does that make sense? No, makes no sense, right? They don't know to compare, right? So when you can figure out where their state of awareness is, it'll guide you in figuring out what type of ad concept to actually do. Because if you're just doing straight testimonials and reviews or an unboxing on a product that they don't even know to want yet, that does not make sense, right? So you want to use that to guide what kind of concepts you're going to use. All right, Hot Pocket ads. Say Hot Pocket. You, 1, 2, 3. Man, it's still kind of rough. All right. Not your best. All right, let's jump in. All right, let's talk about what and why this is. So this is like super nerdy level stuff, right? So my goal is like I can give this to you now, and if you don't understand what I'm saying, when you go to run ads, you can come back to this training and you'll be like, oh, that's really amazing. So if you don't think I'm a genius right now, you can fake it. And then a few months down the road when you're running ads, you can go like, oh man, Ashton's a genius. And then you can message me and then be like, hey, I want to work with you. And be like, all right, cool. All right, sweet. So what I'm going to be talking about today is like, how do you gain that valuable insight on ads that are working? And how do you figure out what's working inside of them? And then how do you expand what's working inside of them to a bigger focus of the ad, right? And this is actually pretty crazy. The team helped come up with this. I didn't come up with this. They came up with it. And we looked at it and I was like, that's really dope, and I actually don't believe it. And so I told him to go do it again, and then it worked again, and I was like, that's really crazy, so let's talk about it. So essentially what we're doing here is we're basically creating micro tests to isolate variables of the ad themselves, and we're trying to get as much traffic, as cheap as traffic as possible, because we just want to know what ads are getting the most attention and clicks off platform. That's our goal, right? And so what we're essentially going to do is split test each ad, choose a traffic objective in a campaign creation. So you've probably been told always use conversion. I would mostly always agree, unless your goal isn't conversions. So then you can use something else. So we use actually a traffic campaign. And then essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take your top winning ad that's giving you 70 to 80% of your results, meaning it's that workhorse ad that you just know, like we can't put anything against it. It always wins. And it's frustrating. We want to develop a better ad. So you're looking for those kind of ads, and what you're going to do is when you find that, you're going to take that ad itself, and you're going to put it into a traffic campaign in your top performing audience, but every ad set's the same. It doesn't really matter. Every ad set is the same targeting. Every ad set is 10 ad variations within that ad set, okay? And what you're going to be doing is testing a different hook, top line and body copy. You test a different headline. You can test a different CTA. You just need 10 variations of that ad. And it's important that each variation isn't just one of those like, oh, it's a variation. Everything that you should be testing should tell you something uniquely different about your control versus the variable that you launched, right? So that's the biggest thing there. And here's the cool part. You can set the ad set budget to $25 a day. You can do this test very, very, very cheaply, okay? So $25 a day, you have 10 ads testing different specific elements, and then you're just gonna create a rule inside of Facebook that'll turn off the ad, not ad set, ad after it goes past 400 impressions. Very cheap, it's a very small test. So essentially what you're gonna see in that ad, right, because if you've ever run campaigns, you're like, man, I put 5 ads in this thing and it only sends money to one ad, right? And it ignores everything else. So all you're gonna do is have a rule that turns off that ad after 400 impressions, okay? It's gonna be automatic. So you're gonna see that best one, and then it's gonna shut off after 400 impressions. And once every ad has been turned off, you come back for a review. 400 impressions is almost nothing. It'll happen in, over the course of probably 4 to 5 days. You can have all those ads have 400 impressions, even if you're running like 10, 20 bucks a day. It's pretty cheap. So then, once the ads run and they all turn off, you're gonna sort them by unique outbound click-through rate. And what you're looking, and this is the most important part, and also the part that most people ignore me on, is that you're looking for a 200 to 300% increase in unique outbound CTR, right? You're not looking for just marginal gain. You're not looking for like, hey, this one beat the other ones, kinda. You're looking for exponential difference, right? And it's gotta be 200 to 300% more than your conversion campaign had when it was a control, okay? So, example, if it was a 1% unique outbound click-through rate in your conversion campaign, in your traffic campaign, in this test, you're looking for a variation that is at least a 2% or a 3% or higher, okay? You're looking for exponential difference. Couple reasons for this. One, marginal differences can just be like luck, right? But also, traffic campaigns by nature will get higher unique outbound click-through rates because you're optimizing for traffic, right? So Facebook is now looking for that. So it has to be exponential because when you bring it back into conversion later, it's going to go down, okay? Okay, here's what I mean. Here's an example of what it looks like inside of an account, right? So you've got all these different variations, right? And we're testing all of them. You can see that the top one, right? The average of them, they're like 1%, 2%. The top one is 4.28%. Exponential difference, right? So that's what we're looking for after these tests run. These were the ads themselves, top 3 ads. The only difference in each of these ads is that top line of copy. It's the only difference. Same video, same headline. The only difference is the hook, right? So that's the only difference. And I mean, we were talking about it yesterday, the importance of that first initial hook, what the content people first see, right? This was the difference. What we noticed was that consistently distracted was that high unique outbound CTR, right? So all we did was we took that hook and we put it in the banner of the video. We realized the top hook, consistently distracted, which is the 4.28 unique outbound CTR. We added it to the banner. It's the only difference. And we were able to drop the cost per call from $180 to $200 down to $60 just by taking what we realized was catching more attention and applying more focus into it. I know this whole strategy, you're like, all right, this is cool, but you guys are paying attention now. You guys like that kind of drop on your ads. Super easy, right? See another example. This was another client. Again, we run the same test, and you can see most of the ads are like 3%, 4%. The top one is a 6.51%, right? Exponential difference. So we looked at that ad, and what we were seeing inside of the copy itself is that it was asking about, do you need a Q1 plan? Are you building your business, right? These are the first trainings. We're gonna give you that business to like really crush the new year, right? And when we started looking at that copy, what we just started theorizing was people who'd be interested in that copy most likely don't have a plan because they don't probably have a business yet, right? They don't have a plan of action, and so they're probably not really full-fledged as a business owner. This is probably not their main thing yet, or they're just interested in exploring this as an opportunity for themselves, right? So all we did was apply interested in nutritional coaching as a banner inside of the ad itself. We dropped MQLs, marketing qualified lead costs, that were as high as $60 to $70 down to $30. What does that kind of reduction do for your business? If you can cut your cost for marketing qualified leads in half. Huge difference. And all it is taking a second to theorize about why is this working, and then how do I take what is working and make it a bigger focus inside the ad itself. And you don't have to be a creative genius to do it. I, unfortunately, will never be able to do what he does back there, okay? But I can come up with basic ideas of how do I make what is getting their attention a bigger focus inside the video, and I can slap a few words on a video, right? So it's very easy, but it's very, very effective. And it works on TikTok too. This was what was weird. This is just thumbnails. These are all the same ads, same videos. They're just different thumbnails on TikTok. And because of that, because of testing thumbnails, we were able to drop the CPA from $200 down to $100. Just because we were starting to go, okay, what interests would our target market have? Well, maybe they like street racing, or maybe like racing people on the dunes or being on a beach, right? We're just thinking about what are the things that interest our market. Can we make that a thumbnail to catch their attention really quickly with like almost subliminal dopamine fires on a thumbnail? And can that get their attention more than others? And it clearly did, right? Works really, really well. So, final recap and conclusion on this. What you're doing, it's really the goal is how do you get a lot more out of what you got? And the first thing is that audiences still drive pretty significant impact on ad success. However, it should only take up about 20 to 30% of your time, okay? You can clearly see from those initial case studies with clients is that, man, it really did make a difference, but what we're realizing now is we want to spend much more time on the creative, the concepts, the ideas, and really once we find an audience that works, and ideally what we're looking for is an audience size of anywhere from 5 to 15 million or larger, but 5 to 15 million, if you can get an audience size that size and you know it works, then you're probably good. You have a long time that you can spend in that audience. Next is ensure that you're implementing an idea and concept iteration testing schedules. So this is a lot of work if you don't have a marketing team, but you really do want to get to a place where you can have everything scheduled. If you can get your tests and your ideas of what you want to do scheduled, the more time you can plan ahead and get ahead of it and make those tests more valid. I think a lot of the times when I look at people who are testing ads, it's like they just jumped into the ad account and was like, all right, what am I going to test today? And you get very little thought there, and typically your ideas are much lower because you just haven't put the time into actually thinking about what you're going to test. Next, use traffic campaigns to save on ad spend budget and test iterations. And essentially what you're looking for is those workhorse campaigns producing 70 to 80% of your KPIs. And then choose the idea, then choose the concept that you want to test, and test ad styles last. Ad styles is typically like just an optimization thing, okay? Finally, split test each element of an ad. We start with headline, then copy hook, then opening video hook, thumbnail, then creative color. You can use that as just a simple way to start testing and doing your guidelines. Amazing. Are we doing questions or transition? Amazing.
We have 15 minutes for questions.
Let's go. Yeah. Look at that. Yeah. And just for context too, if you had questions on things I talked about yesterday, feel free to ask them now.
All right, perfect. Thank you for the presentation. Really like the hot pocket style of isolating what works and then putting it onto the thumbnail. I think we saw that too. Like it produced a massive difference, even having like the same video and then adding the meme banners on top of it or making it like more clickable. Really good. When pocketing it and having like multiple different ad sets with multiple different hooks and stuff, so I mean, the goal is to have multiple winners there. How do you go about scaling all of those? Because I suppose they have different scaling capacities of like one can spend $1K a day, others can do like $200 a day. Do you do just like raising the budgets on the campaigns? Do you do some bid caps there? Or like what is your scaling structure with the isolated winners there? Or do you group them together again?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's, without spending another hour, but essentially like what we try to do in our campaigns, we use what we call a decentralized account structure, which is essentially just, we want to create campaigns that each have an individual focus for them. So example, we have one campaign that only focuses on audience targeting, trying to find those audiences that we want to add in. Phase 2 is entirely creative focused. So we're using only the audiences that we know have worked from our previous campaign and using those in phase 2. And phase 2 is where we spend most all of our time, right? That's where we do those tests and those creative tests. Phase 3 is essentially, now I think what is really working more and more is just consolidated campaigns, DCO, the bigger audiences that you can. This is what phase 1 is feeding. So if we can feed that into the main campaign that we know is working, then we just have one campaign that's built for scale. Or really phase 3 or after phase 2 is where we can start getting experimental, because what we're doing there is not looking for marketing effectiveness, we're looking for media buying efficiency, right? So we'll test across the board on scaling. Some accounts, you have to just like do that duplication method, right? Like you just will not be able to get a campaign to doing $10,000 a day or $20,000 a day. You can get like 10 campaigns to do $500 a day, right? So we'll test that, or we'll always test vertical scaling, because that's just the easiest, 20, 25% real. I like to do every 2 to 3 days, but 20, 25% every 2 to 3 days. Or we'll go into bid strategies, but bid strategies have not been working well for us. It feels like every 6 months it changes whether or not it works. Yeah. Like all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's working again. And then everyone goes rapid fire manual bidding, and then it just stops working. But scaling side, it's really just, it depends on the account. And we try to do like 3 methods at a time, see what is working versus not, and shut off the ones that aren't. Yeah. What else? Also, if you guys want to, feel free to take pictures, tag me on Instagram, no big deal. All right, back to questions. Yeah.
Have you tried that hot pocket theory on Google? Any differences there, or like YouTube ads? Something that
Billy, have we tried it on Google? He's my media buyer for Google and YouTube, so I don't know.
Yeah, we kind of adapted. Yeah, so that kind of came first. What they were testing on Facebook, and then kind of what I came up with was testing them with YouTube Shorts. So for YouTube Shorts, the CPM is, I'd say, probably 20% or less of like the normal CPM for like a video conversions campaign. So exactly the same kind of thing, iterative and testing like the concepts or angles that we have in like a 60-second shorts video, and we can test those at a very, very like low cost. And then once we've validated that, the hook, like what Brady said yesterday, the first 5 seconds is the most important for us. So once we've validated what the hook is going to be good, we can then turn those either hooks into full ads, turn those angles or concepts into full ads, and kind of know that we've got data at a low level before spending more money on testing 5-minute ads. And even because obviously with YouTube, there's way more production value that's required in terms of writing scripts for, like the process we have is kind of writing 8 to 10 hooks, 2 to 3, body scripts, and then having the client record those. So we don't want to launch into that process until we've validated the hooks and angles that we're going to use on a smaller scale and for less.
And you're optimizing for CPM. That's your target metric that you're looking for?
Yes. Just because it's the same thing. Like the core concept there is like, how can we test and improve these concepts for less?
In CPV or CPM?
Oh, so we're still optimizing for video views. Sorry, for the
video views. For
the YouTube Shorts. But yeah,
beautiful.
And do you look at click-through rate, or is it more like retention?
Kind of everything really, but with the YouTube Shorts, we still will see conversions in the ad accounts. That's obviously the thing that we're gonna want to look at most. But yeah, CTR definitely, and just the stats on the video and whether we're getting retention past 5 seconds.
Cool.
I have another question. Where would you draw the line between ads that get attention and convert and ads that build trust and build more trust over the long haul and don't convert as good, because I did ads where they converted really good, but for some people who don't know me, they say, oh, these typical scammer coaching, blah, blah ads, you get attention with that. Start a brand and make high polished branded ads. I did the high polished branded ads, and unfortunately, they didn't convert as good. And how would you balance that out?
You're talking about when it applies to the testing structure that I gave?
Just
in
the ad
general?
concept in general, and what you say, what claims you make.
Yeah. So the biggest thing here is really it's probably two things. One is the bottom line metrics at the end of the day is what matters and what should guide how you react. But then conversion rate on the landing page and bounce rates are a big indicator. Because a lot of times we'll create things on the front end that aren't relevant to what they're about to go experience. And so you might have really cheap click costs, but you have a really high bounce rate. All of a sudden you realize like people are only spending a couple seconds on your website. Because what they saw on the front end, the expectations that your ad built, was not satisfied when they got to the page, and therefore they bounce, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like if you have something working or you're getting a lot of traffic, you should check out what's happened to my conversion rate and what has happened to my bounce rates. Now, the higher you scale, almost always those go up, right? So you have to keep that in mind. But what you're looking for is like, ooh, that's just not a marginal change. That change has not scaled proportionally to the amount I've scaled traffic. And it's been exponentially different. And that could mean that like what you're presenting on the front end is not meeting people's standards when they get to your website, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, are you optimizing for understanding your market well, right? Like just like yesterday, right? It was like the marketer of the business that can go, is this how you feel? Is the one that can do that best? That's the one that wins. But a lot of times when we get those cool ones that get a lot of clicks, we weren't asking that question. We were asking what gets them to click. And if we're optimizing for that outcome, we typically get it. And so that's the problem. Does that answer it, or is that still vague?
Yes, it answers. So I just look at the cost per acquisition, so to speak, so the whole funnel, and the concept that works best, I should stick with that no matter what I say in the ads, because it works.
Well, I would say that the concept dictates what you say, right? So like,
Yeah.
if I'm saying an us versus them, I can only say us versus them and be relevant, right?
Yeah.
So like the concept kind of dictates what you say. If we're just talking about how it looks, well, that's different. You should always be testing how it looks. But if you find a message that works, the chances of you fatiguing out, or any of us in this room really fatiguing out that audience, is very low. And so it's just, how can I then say the same thing but in a new way?
The shitty ones work better, but I want to position myself as premium. This is my problem.
So here's the thing, though. Like, when you say that, what you're talking about is the ad style, right? But you are saying something in that ad that has nothing to do with how it looks, right? But they just, essentially all that ad style did was lower their guard down enough to listen to what you were saying. So it wasn't high production. So they were like, oh, this feels personal. I'm going to listen to what this person's saying. I love that you're, yes, absolutely. But their walls are down enough to like, now I want to know what he's saying. And it's what you're saying that's actually convincing people. But your style is just what allowed them to consume what you had to say. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks.
Going back to what you said at the start,
Yeah.
often the ads that have higher lead costs can sometimes have a lower CPA, right?
Yep.
And that's what you want. So if then when you're optimizing at a lower spend and you're doing like Hot Pocket, you're looking more at the leading indicators, which often are the inverse of the CPA. So by finding the ones that have got the higher leading indicators and then scaling them, are you not scaling potentially the lower CPA ads?
Yep. It's a great question. I love that you brought this up, because if you do that, you're going to break the first rule that I talked about, which was you only do this on ads that are already winning on the conversion side, 70 to 80% of your results. So because of that, you've now created the control in place that this messaging is attracting the right market, right? It's not just the best ad from a clicks metric standpoint. This was the best ad from a conversion standpoint. And so I'm taking that as a baseline control to now iterate off of that control. So that's
It's
why.
more for testing like variation.
Yeah. Because you're now going, I know this to work in the long-term metrics. That's what I'm doing. The only final note that brought to it, and you can ask your question next, is really important. Base your ad targets, your KPIs, off of what your business will allow, not what you think your ad should produce, okay? It's even the same thing in low-ticket funnels when we build them. It's like you build your funnel off of what CPA you think you can acquire customers for, not try to get your CPA low enough to make your funnel economics work. People get that reverse all the time, right? Their funnel AOV could only possibly be $100, and so you go, we need CPAs at $100 or less. No, it's what do I think my CPAs will be? If I think my CPAs will be around 150, that means I need to create a funnel that allows for $150 or $200 in AOV to be profitable. Same with your ad metrics. It's not, man, we need to get $6 cost per click or $100 cost per book call because that's what I want. It's what does your business actually allow, and then reverse engineer that to go, we need ad costs to be here. But understand that like ad costs, it is exponentially harder to bring down your ad costs unless you're a ninja wizard team like my team, and they can do that stuff. But no, it's exponentially harder to bring down ad costs than it is to bring conversion rates or business economics up, right? Much easier for you to actually just charge a client $1,000 more than to lower your CAC in marketing by $1,000. Far easier. And some of you, like, you would probably make a heck of a lot more money if you just increased your price $1,000. No client is going to bat an eye, but you're instantly transforming your ability to scale your marketing.
When you're marketing, you've got to do a percentage of organic and a percentage of paid. What is your cost higher if you just do paid only and no organic, or do you have to do all? Is it a good balance of both?
No, it's always going to be higher for a lot of different reasons. There's like some tinfoil hat reasons of like your CPMs get lowered by Facebook or any platform really when they see that you're an organic contributor. They will lower down your CPMs. They see you as a higher quality advertiser brand. They see you as a real person, essentially, right? But the other side of it is like far more often than not, your market or your prospects who are about to invest a lot of money with you, they almost always are going different places. They're almost always going to like, when I see that ad and I'm curious, I'm probably gonna click that sponsored button and just go to your page and we're like, 2 likes. I can trust you with money. Like, no, they're not. Or they're going to Instagram, or they're seeing you. Or more realistically, like even now that organic and advertising, I believe, are getting much more combined on platforms. Like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, like they're all like starting to really mesh those worlds together where you can link monetization and organic together. And so whenever they're engaging with you, there's a lot of chances that they're getting served your other content. Or they're going to go to your page, and now all of a sudden they're going to get served your content as they go on. And so a lot of us are maybe only counting on the people who convert within 7 days. But the vast majority of your customers are going to convert over 60 to 156 days. And in that time frame, if the only piece of content they've ever seen from you is an ad, and they're not seeing anything else, someone else is getting that customer. You know? So you definitely want to do both, and it does bring down ad costs, for sure.
What if you're just a new business starting out?
Then start making content. I mean, realistically, right? So like one of the things I didn't even show here, like I'm very weak when it comes to content, in my opinion. I don't do a lot. But when I looked at the last 90 days, I've had like 3 million non-follower viewers on my Instagram page alone, right? I would have to pay like 30 grand for that reach. And I'm just posting a free video. You know? And so the more you can realize like organic is not just like, it's not a marketing thing, it's an asset that you really have, and it's free. All we got to do is just post. But to that end, like Brady said, like it really does come down to value and content. One video that makes someone go, dang, they should have charged for that, is worth 100 videos that it's just like, whatever, you know, see it all the time. And so the more time you can put into it, I've got to do better at it. But it is probably the highest leverage, the most undervalued asset and resource that people have today that they just don't use. Cool. Anything else? Awesome. Thanks, guys. This was fun.